Terry Lohman. I'm co-chair for UU's for Just Economic Community. We'll let other people in as they show up. And Cindy Piester is our speaker tonight, and she's speaking about how military is a really bad polluter. And we need to do something about it. There are all sorts of structural problems with it.
Are you ready for me, Terry?
Mm-hmm. I am.
Hi, everyone. My name's Cindy Piester, and basically what I'm going to talk to you about today is this action of immediate witness that UUJ, EC, many members have helped me with this, and a number of people outside of our group, and how I'm learning about the AIW process myself. So I submit this on the 15th, and then that'll give the UUA an opportunity to review it and send it back to me with any suggestions they may have. And this review process kind of goes back and forth for a while, and anyone that's in the audience that has suggestions, that could all be added to this. You know, one of the reasons that I'm doing this is I was a peace activist for many years. Both my father and my husband were war veterans.
Hey,
and so that was a natural place for me to be. And after my husband died, I started working on climate. The connections between militarism and climate were very clear to me.
Cindy, I don't know who else is speaking there, but
I started doing this work, and I'm very grateful to everyone.
Okay, great.
Giving me a chance. I beg your pardon?
I think Audrey was not on mute. Hi, Audrey.
Was there a question?
Oh, no,
No, she's on the phone.
Okay, so I'll go to the
It's
next
all right.
slide. So right now we're in a place where the IPCC is telling us that the situation with climate change is code red for humanity, which we all know is very bad news.
You know, your
This
slides are not
AIW,
showing.
action of immediate witness for this year is to protect the livable planet we love. Is there a question?
The slides are not showing if you think they are. The video is not on right now.
I think she might have frozen. Okay, I can do the slides though. But Cindy's got the audio.
Oh.
Code red for humanity. I think that's where she was.
Okay, Terry, you're going to take over the slides. That's fine.
Mm-hmm. I got them.
Okay, great. Okay, so you can click on the next one if you would, please. Action of immediate witness for the GA this year. So what my plan is I present this to you all. I'm going to include the actual text from the AIW as it now stands. And I will also have extra material in there to kind of give a little more context to the situation of what we're discussing. So not all of this language will be in the AIW. And I think that's posted on the website, isn't it, Terry?
Yeah, it is. It's the one that you had a few days ago because I couldn't change it after the email went out.
Yeah, so this is constantly being changed, revised, and improved. Okay, so the next slide, Terry. Protect the livable planet we love. And then the next slide. Climate justice requires addressing military emissions. Many of us have worked in climate justice, and this particular aspect of the problem has really not been discussed much, but it's very important. Next slide. And then click on, let's see if I can do this or not. Can you click on that a second time, Terry? The same slide, just click on the slide itself.
Yeah.
Oh, it's okay. So we lost all of our beautiful special effects. I'm very sorry.
Sorry.
I've been having some difficulties with my computer, so we don't get to see the nice Earth as it moves around. But this is a very sobering thought. We are the last generation that can prevent irreparable damage to our planet, and this isn't news. This came out a couple years ago. Okay, next slide, Terry. So many UUs have worked really hard on all kinds of climate change mitigation and adaptation, and I'm really proud of the UU. I mean, we're so careful that, you know, our finances for the organization are very careful to not invest in any fossil fuel projects and that kind of thing. So, and then we see the green sanctuary movement that so many churches have been involved in. And it's wonderful to see the diversity of efforts that we've all taken to deal with climate. But we're still the atmosphere is heating up dramatically. So it's time that we actually address the role of militarism in this. Thank you, Terry. You want to move it up another. So where we are now is we're facing the greatest challenge in human history. I mean, I think that's hands down. Next chart, next slide. So I don't think that I'm alone in thinking this, but the way our situation is in the world today, I don't think there has ever been a time where UU principles need to be applied more than they do right now. Okay, Terry. So if there ever was a time for us to affirm our sixth Unitarian Universalist principle, the goal of world community with peace, liberty, and justice for all, and our seventh principle, respect for the interdependent web of all existence of which we are a part. The time is now. Okay. So I'm just going to go through the principles very quickly. Our UU principles impel us to act to protect the web of life. Especially those vulnerable ecosystems and communities which are most immediately impacted by climate change. And of course, we all know that the UU and all of its branches and organizations are serving many diverse communities that are impacted. Okay, Terry.
You want me to go one more?
Yeah.
Okay.
This slide shows a representation of just a very minority of those communities that are served by the UU at the United Nations, and also that are served by the UU Service Committee. So our UU principles compel us to uphold the inherent worth and dignity of every person. Okay, Terry.
Okay, and call for justice, equity.
Yeah, you can move it up.
Okay. Want me to go one more?
Well, what I'm seeing on my computer, it says our UU principles compel us to uphold the inherent worth and dignity of, okay.
That was okay.
I'm sorry, you guys, I have a beautiful slideshow, but my computer's not cooperating. or we'd have all of our lovely little special things. Okay, I want one more. From what I'm seeing, we're on the same slide.
Okay.
And a call for justice, equity, and compassion in human relations. And this slide is taken from Bangladesh. And you can see these people are miserable. They're drowning, literally. Very vulnerable. And
I think we must, here we are. Yeah.
I think we skipped one, or at least. Mhm.
Okay.
And the free and responsible, go ahead.
Right.
Yeah, I just got a phrase there and call for, okay. We're having problems, I think.
No, I think search for meaning is where I'm at.
And the free and responsible, okay, see, so I'm having a lag time between what you see and what I see. Search for meaning, yes, okay.
Search for meaning.
Yeah, one more.
Acceptance of one another.
Acceptance of one another, yes. The encouragement, acceptance. I don't know, on my screen it's going backward. I hope that's not happening for everyone else. Okay, go
No.
ahead.
Okay. Encouragement of spiritual growth in our congregations and the right of conscience. Want me to go one more?
Well, what you're seeing and what I'm seeing are two different things, Terry. So just go ahead, and then when we get to the end of these, maybe.
Okay. Is everybody else seeing the right of conscience?
Yes, I
Okay.
am.
Yeah,
All right.
yeah. I'm the only
Okay.
one that's not, I guess.
Okay. And the use of the democratic process. Within our congregations. And within. Society. So you have a lag, Cindy.
Yeah, that's okay. It's fine. I'm just not catching it when you do.
Yeah,
Okay,
we have
and
we have a lag of like 3 screens almost.
Yeah, it's 3 or
pretty
4 screen
intense.
lag.
Yeah.
Okay, and at large. And to seek the goal of world community with peace, liberty, and justice for all. Is the audio keeping up with you, Cindy?
Yeah, you're ahead of me. Go ahead. I'm not keeping up with you, but that
Okay.
audio is good. Okay, so the atmosphere has been disrupted by human-caused greenhouse gas emissions. Next. And the carbon dioxide levels are the highest they've been in 3.6 million years. The Earth's surface temperature has risen 1.1 degrees Celsius above pre-industrial times, requiring unprecedented and urgent action to avoid irreversible global warming. As you know, it's continuing as we speak. Many of the changes observed are unprecedented in thousands, if not hundreds of thousands of years. Changes such as continued sea level rise are already deemed irreversible. Irreversible over hundreds to thousands of years already. So the United Nations Secretary General Antonio Guterres warns us that the IPCC's 6th assessment report of August 9th last year is code red for humanity. Okay, just reminding that. Next. And he warns us in February of this year that it's an atlas of human suffering. And I don't believe that we are getting the full news at all. There's a lot of deaths that are taking place in the global south that I can barely find anything about it even online. Although I know it's taking place now. And we can keep going to the next slide, but you can think for yourselves all of the different kinds of human suffering that are awaiting us as we face serious water and food shortages through drought, through fires, through floods. And this is going on all over the world. but particularly in the global South. Next.
Okay, do you have the one with the little boy drinking water?
Uh-huh.
Okay, so next, all right.
Uh-huh. Yeah, and families are facing how to deal with climate change, and parents are dearly worried about their children and their grandchildren. And of course, it's having an impact on the homeless here in the United States and across the world as food prices and water accessibility all rise. And we face the challenges of a difficult world impacted by climate change that makes everything that we're experiencing more difficult. So Antonio Guterres, and you can go to the next slide. I have the greatest respect for this individual, and what he's telling us is the facts are undeniable, and that leaders throughout the world, and we're not just talking probably about government leaders, we're talking about industry, we're talking about the oil and gas industry. The leadership is criminal in how they have not taken this challenge seriously as they should. Next slide, Terry. And he says that the world's biggest polluters are guilty of arson of our only home, the earth. So is he talking about us? Is he talking about the United States? Well, next slide. The United States bears responsibility for 29% of the world's cumulative greenhouse gases. I have seen different research on this, but this is the number I found between, I think something like 1850 and maybe about 10 years back, the largest of any nation in the world. Whatever it is at any individual year, the United States bears a great deal of responsibility cumulatively, because as the greenhouse emissions go into the atmosphere, they stay there and they build up. And the United States was right after Europe in terms of industrializing our country. And we found out in World War I just how essential it was to have ready access to fossil fuels. Because the nations that had the fossil fuels had such an advantage in any sort of wars. So very, very early in the century, we started developing our supply lines for the military to make sure that we had access to those fuels. And that effort has continued up until the present moment. Next slide. Then when we talk about criminal liability, there's been numerous lawsuits against ExxonMobil. What you see on the left here, and some of you may very well be aware of this already, and that is, of course, that Exxon did their own research years back, decades back, and the trajectory that they found that was a possibility, you see here, and it's very much echoed in what we're experiencing in reality. So they had a solid scientific basis given to them by their own scientists. So did they step back and say, hey, it's important to not risk the life of all the species on the planet, as it would heat up much faster than our bodies can mutate and adapt to? Or shall we put our profits first? And of course, that's history. They put profits first and started a massive campaign to get the average citizen to believe that the science was unclear. And they said that when the average person on the street thought that the science, climate science was unclear, that they would have won. And we can all weigh in on that. It looks like they won. Next slide. And then what we saw, of course, under George W. Bush presidency was the mask was ripped off of the military-industrial complex. With the Vice President, Dick Cheney, as the CEO of Halliburton, taking tremendous responsibility in that in that administration for all kinds of business dealings and the direction of the nation. So when we talk about the military industrial complex, I'm sure everybody in here is really very well aware of that. Who gets squeezed out of that is the voters. Congress gives the money to the military industrial, gives the finances the Pentagon to purchase the things they need, which they do. They purchase from the various defense industries. And then a lot of that money, massive profits from the defense industries, go into supporting the election campaigns of individuals that they want to see in power. So the public has been squeezed out for a very long time, even though we have some form of democracy left in place. Our rights have really been seriously degraded. Next slide. And of course, the military and blueprint includes the supply lines. If we talk about what the blueprint of the military is, this talk doesn't begin to cover that. If anybody wants to have that talk presented to their organization or their church, I would be glad to do it. Veterans for Peace is also doing it. It really is a much fuller coverage of what those exact different aspects of the blueprint are. But the supply lines is massive, absolutely massive. And you think about how we get what we need for into the fighting theater from wherever it is. That's the fuel, the food, the clothing, everything that we need to conduct a war, all of the equipment. A lot of that is flown in massive Stratocasters, and they measure their fuel use differently, of course, than we do with our cars. It's gallons per mile, and the war fighting jets that drop the bombs on these countries, I mean, their blueprint, they're not just their economic blueprint, but their environmental blueprint is huge. So the supply line, then the impacts of the industrialization, clearing the land, the excavation to get to the raw resources that we need to make the equipment used for war fighting and for militarization is a huge process. Every aspect of this uses tremendous amounts of energy. And of course, then when we are at war, we also see the destruction of environments and communities and towns and entire nations, literally, that either will need to be rebuilt at tremendous environmental expense, or people are going to be forced out as refugees. Next slide. So the IPCC's latest report of April 8th, Guterres told us it is now or never. So that's one reason I'm writing this AIW, which I'm hoping you'll all support. We're at the bottom in terms of the time that we need. We must act now. Next slide. And on top of that, our greenhouse gas emissions, in order to reach the 1.5 degrees Celsius target, our greenhouse gas emissions have to peak no later than 2025. So we're not talking 2030, we're not talking 2050, we're not talking the turn of the century. We've got 2 years before that level of emissions has to start going down. And of course, we're nowhere near reaching that goal. Next slide. So you can slide this. What this is doing is it's challenging all of us as UUs to respond to these warnings with actions. With our use of the democratic process in our congregations and as advocates with society to prioritize saving vulnerable and essential ecosystems and thank Lucy who drafted that particular text. I just loved it. Next slide. Even though the defense is the world's largest of fossil fuels, it's also the largest institutional producer of greenhouse gas emissions. But that is coming out now. I'm focused at a very narrow band with in terms of what I'm looking at and studying. I'm not sure that this is high on the street at all, but it's something that we must confront if we want to have true climate justice. Thank you. Next slide. Sorry, I'm not able to do this for you live. I have such a nice transitions and can't see, but that's okay. Anyway, global military emissions, including war impacts, are estimated 6% of total greenhouse gas emissions. And this comes to us from research by science. Just think about 6%. Now, this is clearly they're estimating. This isn't absolutely solid. It could be less than this, and it could be considerably less than this. This is an estimate, but this comes to us from Stuart Parkinson. He's a scientist in tons of research on this and heads up a scientist for global responsibility. That's the name of the group that has this particular data. He's helped me a little bit with this. He's a wonderful resource and he's very high level and working with the United Nations. But we've got to face the fact that militarism in general, including wars, are pushing climate change, and we've got to address it. Next slide. So what's being featured in this slide here is a quote from John Kerry that I saw he gave, I think, just 2 days ago. And he's telling us that the longer the war in the Ukraine carries on, the worse the consequences will be for climate. And I'm very grateful that he has made that statement. I mean, what we have chosen to do, and I absolutely understand it, is to send the people in Ukraine defensive weapons. What needs to be done additionally, I think everyone would agree, is on negotiations and diplomacy. We've got to end these wars because every bomb that's dropped, every day that passes worsens our impacts on the climate. Next slide. So what Kerry was really telling us with that statement is that there's really no longer such a thing as a winnable war. If we have any illusions that somebody is going to win this war, the only people that are benefiting from this war at all are those who profit from it directly and economically and financially, largely the defense industry, who are raking in the profits as militarization is being built up in Europe, throughout Europe. And all of these wars put vast amounts of emissions into the atmosphere. War anywhere puts us all at risk. So I thank Kerry for saying that. Now we have to do something about it. We've got to find a new way to exist on this planet besides bombing each other into smithereens. And that Russia's playing a role in this, and other nations. It's it's very, very sad. It came at a difficult time when the climate movement was really building momentum. And with the war in Ukraine, of course, that has slowed down. And what we see now is a huge investment in digging up fossil fuels that won't be online until years, but will impact our future in a very negative way. Next slide. So how does the United Nations Framework Convention on Climate Change fit into this? Next slide. And what is the role of the United States nationally determined contributions? That's where we're going with this AIW. Next slide. So scientists tell us that the nationally determined contributions of the United States, they find it to be critically insufficient. Not just insufficient, critically insufficient. What we're doing as a nation, even though we've heard murmurs about being a leader in the climate movement, is just really not standing up to the data. We are falling far, far short of meeting our fair contribution to meet that 1.5 degrees Celsius goal. Next slide. Yet our military missions are not included in the US reports to the United Nations Framework on Conventions for Climate Change. Well, that happened way back with the Kyoto Accords under the Clinton administration. Although Clinton and Gore were pushing to a large degree for climate, this is something that didn't happen. And I understand from Nita Crawford, who is one of the world's leading researchers on military emissions, that she's got a new book coming out. I apologize for not giving you the title on that. It's not quite in print yet. She says that the US DOD was pushing very hard to make emissions sacrosanct so that they didn't have to be reported at all. That goes way back to the Kyoto Accords. And then under the Paris Agreement, what we learn is that they did upgrade it a little bit by making military emissions optional. Nations don't have to report it, but they can if they choose to do so. They are not mandatory. Next slide. But neither our emissions included, our military emissions is included as part of our nationally determined contributions. Next slide. The United States could provide much needed global leadership that's truly consistent with meeting climate goals if we would take more steps. One of them being including all, and I say all, Department of Defense emissions in reporting to the United Nations Framework Conventions on Climate Change. Now, a couple of points here. All militaries around the world in general, when we do see any reporting of any kind on what those emissions are real skimpy. They don't cover them all. They themselves don't track them all. And so I'm including all Department of Defense emissions, which would mean including the emissions of those industries that use up energy to create our fighter jets and to create our aircraft carriers and to develop and modernize our nuclear weapons systems. All of those things take tremendous amounts of energy, and they would all be included in this DoD emissions if we were to make it mandatory for them to be reported. Next slide. And we also want these emissions to be delineated and included as part of our nationally determined contributions, because The way the emissions are reported through the NDC, they have different categories than the UNFCCC. So we have to break them down into components. It's not straightforward at all, but it could be done. And then as part of the NDC, we could also say that these are what our military emissions are, and we are working to reduce them. Next slide. So when you think about what UU goals are, almost any goal that we have talked about today, or any of our principles, if we genuinely care and want to help frontline communities, we've got to have a livable planet to do that. If all of us are struggling for our own survival and to help the guy that lives right across the street, it's going to really detract from what we can do for those in the global south or the communities that are on frontline right now and facing discrimination in the extreme, being faced with the highest emission rates. I live in Ventura. Right next to me is Oxnard. That community for a number of years had every single power plant in the county in that community. That community was suffering from asthma. It's been a huge push in my community. And that kind of thing is going on all over the country. Where I live here in Ventura County, we are one of California's largest oil producers. We go into meetings at the Board of Supervisors, and what do we see? I'll tell you what it is. I've been in those meetings, and you can see the oil executives coming in their suits, not expecting any problems at all. Now, I'm going back a few years. Right now, we've got a super emitter that's 2 miles from me, a super emitter that's been in play for years, that's right across from a grade school that was discovered by NASA. The work that's been done to fight that is been formidable. The community has gotten together, but that's not just happening here. It's happening all over the United States and all over the world. And as we take our time to fight these local battles, that's part of our goal, our local communities, but it's going to detract as climate worsens and the degrees creep up in meeting our goals. Next slide. So immigrants that are seeking asylum, asylees is what they're called, asylees who are displaced by climate change rather than war, although many asylees are impacted by both climate change and wars, those that are just displaced by climate change have been recategorized. And the recategorization process is using a very harsh militaristic approach to border security. Next slide. This recategorization has blocked climate asylees' legal access to more climate secure nations, threatening their ability to survive. I mean, right now on our own borders, we have people from Central America who are in a huge area that's been very hard hit by climate. This talk is way too brief to cover the climate situation in the Mideast, but I will tell you right now that the climate change that's been occurring in Iraq, that's been occurring in Gaza and in Palestine, that's been occurring in Afghanistan is extremely brutal. Those people are suffering from climate change and also war impacts. But those people around the world now that are trying to survive and trying to get across borders are facing formidable challenges, including those on our own southern borders. Next slide. This has increased the difficulty of the UUSC. They provide advocacy and relief for partners who are in this particular situation, who are impacted by climate and trying to get across borders. This is just one example of the many, many examples that UUs are facing as we try to go forward with our own agenda in the world. And it's being blocked and made more difficult by climate change and by a militarized response. Thank you. Next slide. Oh, this is just a shot of our southern borders and the drones and the difficulties that we see on our own border with these massive laws. Next slide. Therefore, and now we are moving away from the whereases that set up what needs to be done with what I'm asking in this AIW for UUs across the country to have their delegates vote on in June at the GA. And that's really important here. The other thing, before I get into exactly what these things are that I'm calling for resolution, I want to remind anybody that's sitting out there that what we have in this AIW at this point is open to improvement and modification, and I'd love to hear from you. So therefore, be it resolved that the 2022 UUA General Assembly, its member congregations, and individual UUs take immediate action to, number one, next slide, recognize that militarism and war are major obstacles to meeting the 1.5 degrees Celsius goal of the Paris Accords and must be addressed to reduce climate impacts. You know, a lot of people have looked at the military as a sacred cow. Nobody, whether you're a Democrat or Republican and you go to the House, the funding for the military is overwhelming and unsustainable. This AIW does not touch at all on that economic reality. And I'm not including it here. I'm not calling for a cut in the DoD budget. I am calling for a cut in the emissions. It's incredibly a direct connection and directly related to climate justice. But I do want to point out here that when we consider the DoD to be essentially sacred, we are overlooking the impacts of the military on the populations that are being hit, that we go to war against. And we are overlooking the impacts on the veterans. The suicide rate among veterans has been huge for decades. I think it's starting to come down, like from 22 a day committing suicide to something like 17. That can't be quoted. That's flexible. That changes. But as they die off, there's a smaller pool. And when we talk about supporting the military, it's usually connected to supporting the veterans. What we need to do with these wars and what we need to do with militarization is not consider war unless it's the very last possibility for our own self-defense. Next slide. We need to urge our members of Congress to support legislation that reduces emission impacts, particularly those of the Department of Defense. And there is a bill out there right now from Barbara Lee, House Resolution 767, and I really debated putting that on here because she announced that during the last COP26, and she's got quite a number of supporters on that. We were expecting Elizabeth Warren to pick it up and take it into the Senate. She hasn't done that. And it doesn't look like 767 is really moving forward. Trying to find a bill that's directly related to military emissions is a tough call. But there's other things that we as our congregations and organizations can do to reduce emissions and to keep calling for these kind of bills to be created, supported, co-sponsored, and passed. Thank you. Next slide. We can invite our member congregations and ministries to organize moments in worship and religious education to support the pursuit of climate justice and to cultivate actions and advocacy to reduce the overall environmental impacts of all military activities. Another thing that we might do that I don't have on this slide is just, well, it says religious education in pursuit of climate justice. Veterans for Peace, which I'm also on their Climate Crisis and Militarism Steering Committee as outreach director. They have a slides that a slideshow that they present around the country. I have my own as well. Anyway, there's a lot of information in those presentations, and if anybody wants to connect with them, you can find their website and sign up for that, or you can contact me and I can either give you a presentation myself or one of them can. Thank you very much. Next slide. One thing we can do is ask the United States to provide some substantive, I have a terrible time pronouncing that word, to provide real international leadership by calling for the Biden administration and Congress to, next, specify that all Department of Defense emissions be included in our annual reports to the UN Framework Convention of Climate Change. Next. And delineate and plan to reduce the Department of Defense's emissions and include them as part of our nationally determined contributions. That would really bring our status as a climate leader in the world some validity. Next slide. We can ask the UUA office at the United Nations to use its special consultative status with the Economic and Social Council to urge that the policy of voluntary reporting of all military emissions be changed from voluntary to mandatory reporting, and urge that they be delineated as part of nations' nationally determined contributions. Next slide. We can ask this in support of ever more urgent climate transparency and mitigation efforts to be held at the United Nations Convention of the Parties. See, I have a misspelling there, sorry. I did this, I was working on this till the last minute. To be held in Egypt in 2022, November, and if necessary, onward until such goal is achieved. Next slide. We as UUs need to unify and provide ethical and moral leadership for supporting this action of immediate witness on behalf of vulnerable populations and ecosystems, on behalf of future generations. They will bear the brunt of this rather than we who are older, and towards maintaining a livable planet for the benefit of all. And I urge the support, not just from UUJC, but from UUM, Ministry for Earth to support this, UU on Service Committee, the UUUN, UUSJ, the UU Peace Group, which they have already come forward to support this, and for ministers associations to support this. I thank you all. We really, if you can reach out to your own ministers, the delegates from your own churches, that would be very helpful. Let us stand on the side of love as we go forward fight for climate justice in all its aspects, including militarization. I thank you very much. This is the last slide. Thank you.
Okay. Wow.
Okay, I'm trying to get
Yes.
out of this one. No, I
Yes.
just want to cancel this. Okay. Sorry.
It's okay.
Okay. All right. Let's get back to that. All right, we're back. Hi, thank you for bearing with me with the computer problems. I really apologize. It would have been a lot more enjoyable visually if it was working properly, but it is what it is. So thank you all for joining. Thank you all for coming. If anybody has any questions, I'm more than glad to take them and do the best I can with answering them.
Cindy, I have a comment. Today I was listening to an interview of Andrew Bacevich by Chris Hedges. Bacevich is a former military man who's very sort of a principled conservative. And one thing he said was very much along the lines of what you were talking about. He said, in regard to U.S. military establishment, he saw in recent years a growing division to sort of two factions of military faction establishment. One was a faction that actually is more concerned about global problems like climate change and refugees and ecosystem damage. You know, one is fairly progressive, but the other faction is very much into geopolitics and big power politics. And he was saying because of the war in Ukraine, that's actually strengthened the big power politics faction and weakened the global climate change faction. So, you know, we've got a long ways to go, but we do have some potential allies there if we can get past some of these wars. You see.
Well, that is true. There is also a movement to strengthen climate efforts because countries that are relying on fossil fuel for their survival are questioning that. And this may push them more towards renewables. But there was also the other thing that we are seeing even here in our own country, where there's a tremendous push now to develop and access fossil fuels that's very difficult and is maybe not our best solution.
Couple of things I wonder about approaching states. I know that the military is considered federal in a lot of ways, but the industries are in so many states. And there was just a report today on California having like an hour of better gas, use of renewables. But I'll bet they're not considering their military industry within their states when they're calculating for their state, pollution.
Yeah, it's been a very effective way to get the support of legislators, and I'm sure you're all aware of that, across the country, because it's a cash cow for any county or any state to have all this influx of military money coming into those industries. And that really has come to us at a huge price, because we do see that our health industry is failing, that we went through the COVID as we did, and so many communities are impacted. We don't have the money and resources we need for greening our communities and going to electric and all of those things. The budgetary process is tilted so powerfully towards the Department of Defense. And part of it is because of just what you said, Sally. All of our own little communities and counties are being funded, and our legislators are relying on those funds.
One other thing I want to bring up, Cindy, is I'm sure that you could use sponsors from congregations on your AIW. So
Oh,
if anybody,
I really would love it. I need any of you here that value this presentation or think it's the way to go, it would be, I have to get a huge list together for the final submission, and it will not even float unless I have organizations signing on to it, unless I have delegates signing on to it from the various churches across the country. So it's very important. And that, you know, the AIW process is very competitive, and there's a lot of interests that are going to be floated out there that are really positive, really good, and very much needed. But, you know, I'm saying that everything that we do here going forward is almost secondary to making sure that we have a planet that'll support life.
Okay, Sally has her hand up. Sally, do you want to go ahead?
Yeah. I was gonna say that, all these places do have these defense industry jobs, but green jobs are local. They help the community. They can't be outsourced the way so many other jobs can. And we have to keep pushing that. We have to keep, the younger people in these industries can make a transition really easily. The older ones may retire. That's okay. Yeah, that's all.
That's a good point, Sally. It's absolutely the case. And green energy is less expensive these days than fossil fuels. We see what's going on with fossil fuels. So we need to take that into account going forward.
Cindy? I have a question.
Yes. Hi,
Um,
Audrey.
Yeah. Oh, this has been just so good seeing your work like this. And we all need to get behind it. What is your deadline for receiving? I mean, I'm taking this next week to our Social Concerns Action Committee, and I'm trying to give them an avenue for seeing this before the meeting. Is there a way that they could see what I saw?
I think that we'll have this up on our website, won't we, Terry? I think it's going to be up
you're
on the
muted,
website.
Terry.
I believe it's on Facebook and our website as soon as technologically possible.
I can do the slideshow. Yes.
Yeah. And the other thing, Audrey, is, we're not that far apart. So,
Right.
at any point,
Right.
I could,
Okay.
give a more full presentation if you wanted it. But it would be good if you could just get this one and grab it, because my son's coming from Mexico next week and I don't want to do it.
Okay, get me a link, would you? Please get me a link.
Okay, yeah, sure.
Great.
Thank you, yeah.
Okay, wonderful. Thanks so much.
Thank you very much. Anybody else have a question
Well, I have one more.
or a comment? Yeah, go ahead.
You have any, I'm going to say big leaguers presenting with you at GA? I'm thinking of some of the people you and I talked about originally, if they're going to be there.
What I understand is that I only get like maybe 2 minutes to discuss it in the business meeting, and I didn't set up a GA panel or anything like that. Honestly, I have been so incredibly busy, and
Okay.
I just couldn't quite pull that off this year. But between now and then, a lot of work can be done. I can get feedback from you guys. I turn this in to the UUA on the 15th. They come back to me, I don't know, a few days later with their recommendations and what they would like to see changed. And then I am obligated to make those changes. But it's the whole process is open for other partners to say what they want to see in this change, what they want deleted, what they want enhanced, and the language, all of that. So this is an ongoing process until I think around June 15th. So if you have ideas, please shoot them my way.
Cindy, Curtis and Sally both have their hand up.
Oh, great. Well, I'm not calling on you. I was kind of waiting for you to. Curtis, why don't you go ahead?
Yeah, I just might add, I'm with UUJME, and we also have an AIW that actually connects pretty closely to what you're saying and what you're doing here, and that is to call for that international law and human rights must be respected universally, not selectively, because that the war in the Ukraine sort of announces to everybody as a high level of hypocrisy that Russia is immediately condemned as a violator of international law, but nothing like that has happened to the Saudis, to the US in its invasion of Afghanistan and Iraq, and nothing like that has happened to Israel for its annexation by military force of Palestinian lands. So the effort to combat war, I think one of the avenues is through universal application of international law, that the primary law within the United Nations Charter is that no country can initiate a war unless it's an immediate self-defense or is justified or approved by the Security Council. And none of that is true of the wars on Yemen or the US war in Iraq or indeed many other situations. So I'm just saying that our AIW actually does relate to yours, although there is, of course, this difficulty of some level of competition.
Well, I don't. So what group are you with?
Unitarian Universalists for Justice in the Middle East.
Oh, wonderful. I am so glad to hear from you. What do you think of us collaborating and building one so that we aren't pitted against one another? My understanding is there can only be 3 selected. Anyway, I don't know if that's conceivable or possible, but I would certainly be open to working with you if there's any way we can, and we could both sign on it going forward if you like. And to further support what you said, of course, the United States isn't even a member of the ICC or the World Court or any of that.
Yeah, I think I can't speak to that right now, but at some point that might be possible. Yeah.
Okay.
I really applaud that.
Yeah.
It's unfortunate that a religious organization puts people in a position of competing.
Well, it's not really competing. In a sense it is, but
No.
we're there for 5 days and we could do 100 of these if we had, we could, as it is, people complain that we spend too much time on it, which I disagree with completely. Most of the GA work on actions of immediate witness is being done before GA. There's no mini assemblies at GA the way there used to be. So yeah, lots of collaboration between now and then, lots of sign on, and then all the actions of immediate witness submitted will be read by the delegates. They will get to choose which ones they want to put forward this year, but they're all on the record. And in the final vote, there will be 3 that can be either approved or not approved. But so the competition isn't really at the end. If there's any, it's earlier on. But yeah, it's a hard situation. There's so much going on. We need to make so many of these statements, all the time.
I wonder if there's any possibility to get more that could pass.
Yeah, I know Sally is.
Just 3.
Are they talking about 6 now? In the
Well,
past,
it's always been, they bring everything. What it used to be was they would bring, the CSW would bring 6, the delegates would narrow it down to 3, and then they'd have the mini assembly on those 3. Now they're doing all that pre-work beforehand, having collaborators kind of run their own pre-mini assemblies. And then at GA, they will just announce the ones that are there, and the delegates will select, rather than the CSW selecting down to 3, the delegates will make that choice.
Yeah, but that means
But before we get to really discuss them all, you have to read about them before you get to GA, which is kind of
well,
annoying.
there might be 3 or 4 or 5 or 6 or more before the GA. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, there's a bunch up now on the planning page.
Because it
Yeah.
seems very unclear as to how much of a gatekeeper they will be and how many they'll delete, eliminate themselves.
No, my understanding, unless it's changed since last year, is that anything that's up there now, or, it will go forward to the delegates for that first vote.
Well, that's still not.
I think each AIW on Saturday or so, the plenary session gets 2 minutes to present theirs. And then the delegates at that session vote for which ones they like. And the top 3 go forward on Sunday. And then the delegates choose whether to adopt all of those or none of those.
Question is that could be the same this year. It's with this current CSWs, really hard to know what they're going to do, actually. They're not very clear about it.
Thank you very much.
Went to a board meeting where I asked about mini assemblies on the AIWs, and Meg Riley, the board chair, thought there would be mini assemblies, but they're none scheduled right now.
No, there are not many assemblies.
There may be some webinars of some sort, but there's
There are,
apparently even the UA board has been confused about this.
We could ask the CSW to allow a pre-GA webinar on the different AIWs so that people have a
I've
little
asked them
better
to do that, and I've got
better idea of them.
Yeah. But yeah, you might ask them too, if more of us asked about why not have mini assemblies before, online mini assemblies on these things before the GA, and we could easily do that, but I don't see any schedule or something equivalent to that.
okay, here it is. The CSW will post final drafts on the 15th of June. There will be no additional revisions after the June 15th posting. This will allow delegates adequate time to review and reflect on actions of immediate witness prior to voting at the General Assembly.
That says nothing about what happened
So-
on June 15th is what we're talking about.
Well, June, okay.
And if there were mini assemblies on the AIWs, they would happen before that date. And any proposed amendments would be winnowed out or included and that kind of thing.
May 15th, email drafts of AIW to the CSW, feedback on the 23rd. June 1st to 8th, the CSW will post drafts, authors will build connections. June 8th, submit the revised AIW, final posted on June 15th. And June 22nd to 26th, votes to affirm actions of immediate witness during GA. And in the past, those were 2 votes, one to narrow it down from the full field to 3, and then the presentation of the 3, and then the vote to accept 1, 2, or 3 of them.
Apparently no mini assemblies. So that means
Right.
like if we collaborate or if Chris collaborates, that's the only input before the GA is allowed, apparently. Whereas in the mini assemblies, outsiders could come in and propose amendments and things like that, and there could be actual debate on it.
Okay, we haven't heard anything from Carol. Would you like to say anything? Well, we want to give you an opportunity. Okay.
You're muted, Carol.
I think you're muted, Carol.
I'm a peace activist, and we talk continuously about the totality of military spending in the United States and as well as in the rest of the world. But there's a subgroup of people in New Jersey and Philadelphia called No Wars, No Warming. It may be other places too. And this is perfectly fits into the agenda of no wars, no warming, because it's taking the peace movement and the climate change movement and putting them together and saying that you got to solve both problems at the same time. So yeah, this resolution is great because it takes a vital segment of the military posture and, you know, in a sense dumps on it because it hurts the climate. So it's like sort of a double whammy, I hope. I'm all for it. I'm going to take it back to my congregation.
Right.
Princeton, right?
And I didn't even know which Carol was online. You don't have your
Carol,
last
what
name
is your
there.
congregation? What is your?
Princeton.
Maybe there's more, yes.
Princeton, I think.
Yeah. Yeah, she's in Princeton.
Yeah, Carol's a retired board member.
Right.
JC.
So Cindy, do you have any closing words? Cindy on? Yep, she
Yeah,
is.
she's there. I don't know if she can hear you.
I didn't hear what Carol's question is. Could you repeat it, Terry, or her comment?
The summary is that she's been a peace activist for years and she's thrilled to see it combined with climate, that it's a double whammy.
Yeah, that's true.
True.
That's one thing, and the power of this movement is building a bridge between the two communities, and that's so needed. Thank you, Carol. Well, I don't know what church you're with.
Princeton,
Princeton.
New Jersey. But you can say it yourself, Carol.
She's
You're
muted. You're muted, Carol.
No, but I just, I like the idea of the double whammy. And so if this AIW makes it forward, it should have a good chance of being supported because it represents two large interest groups, the, peaceniks and the climate change people. So it should be supported.
Okay,
Right.
Cindy, do you want to give any closing words, or not to cut anybody off, but it looks like everyone's had a chance to speak.
Carol,
Nope, now you're muted.
is there any way that you could ask your delegates to support this and let me know who they are so I can put them on a list?
You're muted. Yeah.
Oh, me? Is she asking me?
Yeah.
Okay. Yes, now, I'm not sure we know who the delegates are, and I always offer to not be a delegate if we have our 8 or 9 quota of other people, because I've been a delegate so many times. So I always tell the minister to put me last or as a substitute or something, although I definitely am planning to participate in GA. But I can get the names of the other people. I don't think it's determined yet.
This webinar and Cindy's slideshow will be on the website so that people can watch it. And if you had somebody you wanted to connect it to, they can do that.
And to get the congregation to sponsor is great too.
Yeah, most of us have annual meetings coming up. Okay, well, if everybody's ready, I will say good
So the
night.
UUA board does have 2 business orientation web seminars on June 1st and 4th. I don't know whether they'll be talking about actions of media witness at those. Also, what does multi-platform mean for this year's General Assembly on May 26th? And those dates will be in our newsletter. I don't know, again, exactly what those are covering, but they're doing a lot of GA work before GA this year, which raises some interesting questions.
Yeah.
Multi-platform is, has to do with how you do it hybrid wise. And there was, some people be in person, some will have a cell phone, some will have access to a PC. or-
Right, and why are they holding the vote open after the session ends and all kinds of good questions
Yeah,
like
there'll
that?
be a certain time period in which you can vote, and that voting will have to be from one of those platforms.
Okay. Well, good night. I'm going to go ahead and close this off, and we'll talk to everybody later.
Thank you, Cindy.
Take care.
Thank you, Cindy. It was wonderful.
Night all, thanks so much. Yeah,
You are a warehouse of knowledge.
Ah,
absolutely.
Thanks, guys. Take
Good.
care.
Be
Bye-bye.
well. Bye.